Welcome to Sexually Charged Radio here on 93.3 FM CFRU. I am one of your co-hosts for today, Ruthie, and I am here with Navi. Hello.
Hi.
And Thomas.
Hi, Ruthie.
Hi, Thomas. How is everybody doing today as we are in the cold winter weather as this is being recorded, or it's starting to get cold?
Pretty good. I've had a busy day, running around a lot. But
Yeah, you had a lot of stuff going on today.
yeah, it's been a good day, though.
Good. How are you doing, Thomas?
I'm doing well. I don't really like the cold, though, so, the fact that this is just starting, I'm like, ugh. It's going to be a long 4 months.
This is the beginning of optimal sleeping weather for me. I like it like really cold. As you know, we've shared a hotel room. We've shared sleeping quarters, all of us, not at the same time. And as far as I can remember. But I like a really cold room at night. And as a person in a non-monogamous live-in relationship with multiple people in the room, cold weather means I can still get cold sleeping temps even though I'm snuggled up between people. So that leads us right into our topic for today.
Isn't that a great segue?
It's a good segue. Thank you.
We planned it, but we didn't.
It's almost like I planned it. Almost. Which is we got this fantastic tweet in. There's a question to us, and we've taken it in two different directions in two different episodes. So definitely be listening for the other episode with a similar question where we take it in a almost strictly LGBTQ direction. But pulling up this text, it is open poly community people help. How do you shut down relatives who claim to have a right to an opinion on how you live your life? So this is a person who's looking specifically around poly, and we thought that maybe as a group of three, we'd spend the first half talking about this question specifically, and the second half as a shout out to folks who are not poly and open, but who are awesome allies and wonderful family members and good friends and all that other coworkers, whatever it may be, especially around the holidays, but good general tips that we all appreciate around non-monogamy, those of us who identify that way. So, any initial thoughts on how to shut down people who feel like they have a right to tell us how to live? And I think that this is an interesting question for a lot of reasons. And one of them is I feel like there's an implication in this question, rightly or wrongly, that being in consensual non-monogamy relationships, which includes poly, is not any kind of an orientation, but is purely a choice. And actually, as science, we don't really have an answer for that yet. It could be that everybody has a non-monogamy bone in their body, and some people make an active decision to pursue that, and some people make an active decision to not pursue that. Some people think of it as an orientation. Some people think of it as just as a lifestyle. So we don't even have an answer for that specifically, but I feel like that might be an underlying thing in our answers. How do you approach the topic? Do you think of it as just a way of living or as an orientation?
I mean, I really, I've always had this tendency to think that we're all poly.
Yeah.
And we just exhibit it in different ways. So, although I've never been in a poly relationship, not because I don't identify as someone who would go non-monogamous, consensually non-monogamous, but I've just never had the opportunity or the experience. But I think I have different friends who satisfy different parts of my life. Mm-hmm. I have different folks who fill me with love and compassion and joy. And for me, that's a poly life. Mm-hmm. People are meeting different needs within my life. They're important to me in different ways. They're loved and cherished in different ways. And so maybe there isn't a science that says that, it's a choice or it's an underlying piece. But for me, I really do feel like love is bigger than any dyad or any one pairing.
Yeah. And then it takes a community to raise a Thomas, but for all of us, right?
It takes a community to satisfy a Thomas. I think that's
honey. All right, that's our next episode. That's when we move from audio to video. But I'm thinking about, Navi wants in on this.
I'm like, when does this air? I mean, is this on YouTube?
As soon as we get the grants, it's going to happen.
Down with this now.
I mean, we are in the right office for it. So, but seriously, that a person cannot fulfill all their social needs with just one other person very often. There's probably some people who can. We can't say always and never to anything. but probably the bulk of people do best in at least a somewhat wider social environment than just one other person. We have coworkers, maybe. We have, family members we may interact with, maybe. We have groups of friends and close friends, farther friends, depending on how we live our lives. And when you were talking, I thought about how, as your friend, it makes me happy to hear you hanging out with other friends. And so I think of I'm happy that you're happy, right? And that's sometimes kind of a poly ethic too, but I love your expanding that to friendships, because I feel like that crosses over in a way that's maybe more understandable to people, that we can be happy that people had a good time with other people in a platonic way. What do you think? Leisure pursuit or orientation?
I feel like neither, maybe. I don't
Awesome.
really know.
I love it already.
I feel like probably, if anything, I would say maybe monogamy is more of a choice than anything. I think if I look at it, all of the times in my life, all of the relationships that I've been in that have been monogamous, have taken a lot of effort. And I think most monogamous couples will find that it takes some work to be monogamous. I think there are a lot of books out there, a lot of
it's not an easy
therapists that are helping out people who really struggle to maintain monogamy, and I think that can be a choice. But for me, polyamory is almost the more natural state, and there are times in my life when I've met people and chosen to commit to a monogamous relationship instead. But for me, my default setting is more poly.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers at all the question.
I like the answer very much. And I'm so thinking about this week. How do we shut folks down who want to tell us how to live our life? And for folks who are poly specifically around that topic, or who are consensually non-monogamous around that topic. First thought that's flowing to my head is thinking about which groups of people I need to prioritize at which times, right? So sometimes what comes first is prioritizing the identity and respect for and kind of reverence, I guess, for my own poly family and all of our, further family members, right, who maybe don't live with us but are still important. And sometimes what's more important is prioritizing kind of the comfort level or the ease of the other people that I'm with. That's the first thought that's coming to my mind. What are first thoughts that are coming to both of your minds on this?
This one's difficult for me because even in the past when I have been poly, it hasn't been safe for me to be out about that with my family.
Yeah.
Or around the holidays. So I have no experience with this in my life. But I'm looking forward to hearing what the two of you come up with and, teach me your ways on the... No, but
that perspective is important.
Yeah.
Because it's not... there's a lot of privilege in thinking that being able to shut people down is a place in life where you can be.
Yeah, and I think even though I do have a lot of privilege in my life, I'm white, I have so many ways that I'm privileged in my life that I do feel more safe than some people might feel. There are other situations in my life, such as the one with my family, where I don't feel safe. Right. I'm always advocating for myself in that way.
Yep.
So for me, I think the best way for me to deal with it has been to not bring it up in the past, which isn't that's not a fair situation. That stinks. I shouldn't have to keep it. Yeah.
You're paying for that.
Yeah.
And it's deciding which is the least worst thing to pay for. The ramifications of saying it or the ramifications of not saying it. And if the ramifications of saying it are even worse, then you should avoid that by all means.
And also, I've had a lot of trouble with my internal almost guilt over hiding it, not because I think I owe it to my family to tell them anything. It's none of their business what I do. They need to earn that if they want to know what's going on in my life. But to my partners, and especially secondary partners, having to pretend that they don't exist when I'm around my family, that's not fair to them. It feels not fair to them, I should say. It's been a real struggle back and forth because I don't want anyone to be my dirty little secret, but I've been lucky enough to have people in my life that understand that that's not what I'm trying to do to them and that my safety is important as well. So I've had great relationships where I've been able to make that work, but...
Well, and I want to challenge that just a little bit, and it's not fair to them, but maybe the unsaid is that you're feeling like you're not being fair to them, or I would say it's the folks who are giving you the consequences that are not being fair to these people that they're not even aware of.
That's what I have to remind myself.
It's not necessarily up to you to be that buffer, right? Yeah. What do you think, Thomas?
Yeah, so I'm reminded of a conversation I had with some family members in a car ride once. It was a little bit of a road trip. And the idea of non-monogamy and poly came up. And it was one of those positions where I was not in a non-monogamous relationship. I wasn't in a poly situation. But I brought the conversation up about, this may be one day where I see myself, or, and
Bold.
yeah, I mean, at the time I didn't think it was. I was just like, hey, conversation. And it ended up being, or I ended up receiving a little more resistance than I expected. A fair bit more resistance than I expected. And then I recognized, though, it was almost better that it happened in that way, because I didn't have the added weight of having to think about my partner's feelings in the moment. That I could have this discussion with family and be angry or frustrated or confused or any number of complex emotions at the moment, but I didn't have to have those feelings about, is a partner going to be hurt, or is a partner going to be not going to be welcome because of this conversation. So for me, one of the pieces where I think of this tweet is, how can you have these conversations, if it's possible for you to have these conversations early on, and sort of set that groundwork and foundation with certain folks beforehand, so then it's not a surprise, now this is a conversation, can you pass the turkey? Whereas, that can be a really emotionally charged moment, sitting at a table, or really, an environment where people can't escape. I guess in a car, unless you duck and roll, you really can't escape a car either. But just for me, doing that groundwork, I think maybe could make it easier in the future if that becomes a conversation. Now there's a lot of complexity with that as well, and because there's an ability for them not to see it as real, because it wasn't in their face, it wasn't a reality. But I felt sort of reassured knowing that there was a little bit of groundwork set on the matter.
See the course syllabus that's already been addressed.
Yeah. And then it's not here I want to bring multiple people to the dinner table because they're equally important to me. And now you need to deal with that. You need to understand that in the moment, or within the next week. It's, hey, a year or 3 later, this might happen, and you've been foreshadowed. This has been foreshadowed. And not in a bad way.
Right.
So, and speaking of not in a bad way, you're listening to Sexually Charged Radio on 93.3 FM at CFRU. You can also be listening to us online at cfru.ca or any of our past episodes, as well as on YouTube by searching Sexually Charged. And we're really fortunate with this radio show for you to be able to write in your questions and your comments. And if someone wants to do that, Ruthie, how in the world do they do that?
Through the power of email, Thomas, through the power of email. AskSC@uoguelph.ca. That's the letters UOGUELPH.ca. And those questions will be received by the wonderful volunteers and interns at Student Wellness, which is part of Student Affairs here at the University of Guelph. And we're very fortunate to have this relationship and support with them, where they receive the questions, some of them get forward to us. They might help us with some background research and the editing, and are a wonderful and essential part of this show being what it is.
Yeah, we are really grateful for all of their hard work, and we're really grateful to all of our listeners who have written in questions in the past. So please continue to do that. We do treat everything you write in as anonymous, so we won't read your name without your permission or give any identifying information.
Yeah. So in my life as a therapist, and having been a life coach before and things like that, there's sometimes some tips that I give people, but I think you have to gauge your safety and your other things with this too. So one of them is you might have, you might want to decide whether you want to just make a basic statement and then just stick to that, or whether you really want people to know a lot about things, or whether you just want to shut down the topic altogether. So kind of those three. And if it's going to be shutting down or just keeping it at a basic level of information, you can come up with 1 to 3 sentences that you just keep repeating. And it feels rude, and it may ask other people to be uncomfortable, but it also is setting up a certain set of boundaries. You are to know this, and I will not be revealing more than whatever you've set out. So it could be something as simple as, you know how bringing that up impacts me, and we won't be talking about this. And then the person tries to engage, you know how bringing this up impacts me, and we won't be talking about this. And if you want to be a little less bold, you can say, I won't be talking about this. But if you want to be a little more controlling, you can, because the other person is basically saying, we will be talking about this. And you'll be saying, we will not be talking about this. And don't be shy with your eye contact if you can. And it's okay if you shake and cry when you say it. Some people will receive that as weakness, but if you stick to your verbal line on this, then eventually people will be irritated. They'll feel like they need to make a parting shot, and somebody will feel uncomfortable enough that they'll change the topic, most likely. You can also take that to an additional line if you feel like you need to and you're safe doing it. You know how this impacts me, or you know where I stand, or you know how you know about my life, and we will not be discussing this. And the last line can be, if this conversation continues to come up, I'll have to exit the conversation, or I'll have to leave the room, or I'll have to leave. Or I'll have to not come back, whatever your line may be. So if you can set that up ahead of time and recognize that your response doesn't actually have to fit what they just said. So if they say, how can you do this? Or aren't you afraid of hell? Or whatever the case may be, you don't have to actually answer that question or address it. You know this about me already. We will not be talking about this. If you choose to continue to bring it up, I'll exit the conversation, which can also look like just sticking some earbuds in your ears too, by the way, until they're going to say what they're going to say. You don't owe them your engagement with it. You don't owe them your politeness. You don't owe them education. You don't owe them making them comfortable. And you don't owe them information either. You can decide you want to, but you don't owe anybody any of that crap. And the thing is, all of those things are earned. And make them earn it. Make them earn it from you. If they want to be treated respectfully, if they want to hear about your life, then they have to earn it the way loving, humane people earn that in everyday interactions from each other. I'm not asking anyone to go above and beyond how we would respectfully treat another human being anyway. Just extend that to these topics. So that's kind of a hardline answer. For other people, it really is like, be an introvert. Again, earbuds are a wonderful thing. You can be the rude one. It's okay. You can be the rude one in order to protect yourself and hang out with your phone, hang out with your earbuds, hang out with some coloring, hang out at the kids' table where they're less likely to bring that stuff up, if you have a kids' table available. Or you can be like me and always find the cat or dog and have prolonged conversations with them, because really what's more adorable than something or someone who grows a lot of fur. So these are all options as well. And it's also fine to lie. It's totally fine to lie. And that's okay. You do what you need to do. Yeah.
I had a really hard time with that for the longest time. I was raised very religiously. Yeah, with being okay with lying. Like, you ask me something that's none of your business, and my answering it truthfully might make this either unsafe or uncomfortable, or
just not what you want to do.
Yep. And so I'm allowed to lie. I had the hardest time with that.
They have to earn your honesty too around vulnerable topics. We all have to earn that from each other.
Another thing I found that works really well along the lines of earbuds is my family personally does not very often respect the, I'm not comfortable talking about this, I need a subject change or I'll leave.
I wish more people could respect that, but that's kind of rare.
But so usually after 5 or 6 times of saying I need a subject change, the one thing that I found they will always respect is I have to pee.
Yeah.
And then I go to the bathroom and I can take as long as I want. Nobody's going to ask what I was doing in there. Yeah. So that's always been a great relief for me. Or even
Great relief. I lack maturity. Continue.
The puns. Okay. Yeah, that, or even things like stopping and pretending there's a pebble in my shoe. It gives me a few seconds to kneel down, shake out an imaginary pebble, retie my shoe, and then rejoin the conversation a little calmer, and usually things have moved on.
It's like taking the fake phone call, or, just finding that little bit of an excuse that just breaks up that conversational norm.
Yeah.
So we have this script when we talk to folks that the question is asked, we respond, and then we ask another question that then has the other person respond. And that just, it's when you go and say hi to someone and they already respond, I'm doing well, before you ask. We have these natural tendencies, but if you can break that conversational norm by finding a pebble in your shoe, by going pee, even if you don't really have to go pee, picking up the phone. I love doing that, especially when they can see that the phone didn't ring, because it's just the biggest middle finger to someone being like,
Thomas,
you know what, you're going to keep doing this? Oh, hello, hi, how's it going?
Sassy.
It's because we're not the ones being rude. They have decided that they're not going to respect our boundaries. They're not going to respect our identities.
Yeah.
So if they're going to be incivil towards us, if they're going to pry, if they're going to violate our privacy in the questions they ask, or if they're going to hurt our partners, then we have every right to, do what it takes to safely and non-violently, hopefully, retort.
Yeah, navigate that moment, do what we need to do.
Pull out that book that you have in your back pocket. Do what it takes and let them know. Maybe not saying I'm doing this to just, get you to shut up, but do it non-verbally, that they just realize that they have crossed that line.
Yeah, absolutely. So my heart sometimes goes out a little bit to folks who feel like they don't know how to do it right from the other side of things. So let's talk about that a little bit. So the first thing I want to say is just acknowledging that you don't know how to proceed with it is a perfectly fine thing to do. It doesn't obligate the other person to teach you, but it lets them know that you're doing the best you can and then proceed to do the best you can. And one of the great ways to think about that is, how would I proceed if this were not a taboo topic that I still didn't know anything about? So for instance, if somebody tells me that their area of study or their job is related to processing mail through the post office, and I actually don't know what that means, like, is that done with computers now? Are there still people in mail rooms? Like, I have no idea what they're actually telling me other than that they have something to do with the postal service happening. And so I wouldn't be like, I don't know how that works, so I actually don't believe that the post office exists.
Yes. Exactly.
And I wouldn't be like, wow, I've never had that job. That must be the wrong decision. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't say those things. I might say, I really don't know a whole lot about that. And, maybe we can talk about something that I do know more about if I don't want to engage in it because I don't feel okay with that. But I've still validated that they said the thing. I've shared that I don't know much about it. And I've asked if it's okay to change the topic, which could be potentially a bit offensive, but it's probably a little bit better than a lot of the things I hear. Or I might say, I don't know very much about that. And I don't know if you get tired of talking about your job this time of year. Is it okay to ask a question? Or maybe you could just tell me a little bit about your job. And then I find out about that. I have a tone to copy from. They've maybe laid some hints about what's okay to talk about. And I've showed some interest. I don't actually have to express an opinion at all. I can just say, this is a new topic for me. I'd love to hear whatever you'd like to tell me about it. And just leave it up to them. And I might even follow up with things like, are you sick of talking about it? Could I ask you some questions? How will I know if I've asked you a question I shouldn't have asked? Because this is a new topic for me. So maybe it's not appropriate to ask how much money you make or how many hours you put in, or is this like a blue collar or a white collar job or something like that. And I might not know the question until I stumble on it. So what I might just say out loud is like, what kinds of questions are okay to ask about this? That's totally fine. And the other person can say, I don't actually want to answer any questions. Or they can tell you like, well, here's what I'm happy to. So if you think about it like that, it's not going to fix every question you might have about how you handle it, but that might be a useful set of guidelines, right? And remember, you don't need to issue an opinion, and you don't need to act like you know. And if you really, and you don't know, so don't pretend you know. What are your thoughts?
I think some of my family, it's almost comical because of some of my extended family want really badly, I think, to be allied with me on a lot of issues that my parents don't want to be allied with me on. But they end up taking every opportunity they see me at Thanksgiving, Christmas, any holiday type times that I see them all, to just ask me tons of questions about things. And so I think what you touched on there about asking, like, what questions are okay? Do you even want to answer questions right now? Like, if we're at the dinner table having a family meal, is this the time for this? Because I think sometimes in an effort to be a really good ally, we want to educate ourselves, and that's important. I'm constantly trying to educate myself. I think it's important for everyone because nobody knows everything.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to remember that there's a place and a time for it sometimes, and that the people who are a part of that group don't always want to be the ones to have to educate you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you can also take it upon yourself to go home and educate yourself.
Absolutely. And again, with a slightly less taboo but somewhat taboo topics, think of how you would handle it if you knew that someone had been dealing with breast cancer over the past year. So you might say, like, I remember you mentioning a thing about breast cancer, and I just want to check in. How are things going? I'd love to hear whatever you'd like to share about that, right? I remember you mentioning being in a few different dating relationships last year. How are things going? I'd love to hear whatever you'd like to share about that, right? You wouldn't be like, how much does this cost? When did you go to the doctor? What are your blood counts? Like, you would just leave a sense of openness, hopefully. What are you thinking, Thomas?
Well, you hit on the education part, which was going to be my big point.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm so glad it got said. So I was like really quickly trying to think, okay, well, what can I add? And what came to me, and it was sort of as you were describing the situation, was also being open to just more general questions. How's life going?
Yeah.
What's going on in your life? Who are the people in your life? Leaving it open to interpretation about that question, so it doesn't feel pressured. I've really stopped asking folks about their relationships because a number of people have been getting divorced in my life. And it's suddenly this pressure that I find when I say, oh, how's your partner doing? And then for them to have to say, oh, well, we broke up, or it's ending. And it became a bit of a stress on those individuals.
Yeah.
So I try to start my conversations at that high level, see what information they share, and then I'll probe with the questions you were mentioning, Ruthie. And for me, I thought that was a bit of a safer mechanism. Not to say that I'm ignoring asking questions. I mean, if that's an important part of their life, I want to know about it, but I want to give them the control as to when a topic comes up.
Right.
So that maybe because in that environment, there are certain family members who they don't want to talk about it in front of. And so they don't want to bring it up. And if I ask that question, it creates that awkward context. So recognizing that just because I think something's a good time, it might not be a good time for someone else to talk about something. So start off general and then narrow in.
Yeah.
As the other person provides indicators of consent for that topic to be addressed.
I think also you might have the feeling that perhaps you already know you disagree about poly stuff. So you might be hosting some people who are consensually non-monogamous, and you really don't feel okay about that, but you want to be respectful at the same time. And so, I would advise that, think about what your main focus is and where your values are. So you may have conflicting values. You want to show respect for people's autonomy and decision making. You're happy when they're happy. You don't feel real good about non-monogamy. And you might have a conversation with them ahead of time and ask, what's the best ways that I can show respect at this dinner environment? Because my values are supporting in these ways, but as you know, this other stuff is difficult for me. I want to make sure that you're happy and comfortable and feeling loved here, right? And I think we can all think of examples where we might disagree with another person's decisions or feelings or orientations around things, and we still decide to be mutually respectful and accept differences and just note that we all feel differently about it. So those can be nice things to discuss ahead of time to see where everybody lands, and it might also reduce a lot of angst and stress entering the situation. It's also a great time to ask things about, like, how many people should be invited and how should I address each of your partners and how do you want to be introduced to other people, and things like that as well. Which pretty much wraps us up for our time. Thank you so much for joining us, Navi. Thomas, thanks for being my steadfast co-host. And thank you, listeners, for listening to us on 93.3 FM or CFRU.ca, or perhaps on YouTube or any of the other places that you found us.
Have a good day.
Thanks for having me.